I'd like to start the Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting for Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. To begin the meeting, we'd like to call it to order. I'd like to make note that we do have a quorum. And moving on from that, we will do an approval of the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda this evening?
Chair Huhim, Commissioners, I just want to add that for our discussion item, number 6.1, I did add a PowerPoint presentation to the online packet just so that if anyone in the public is following along, they have that before them while we go through that today.
Wonderful. Are there any questions on that? Hearing none, I'd call for a motion to approve the agenda for the Tuesday, March 28th Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting.
Madam Chair, motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion from Commissioner Wooten and a second by Commissioner Doblinger. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the item passes 5 to 0. Moving on, we're going to do the approval of the minutes of the March 14th, 2023 HRA board meeting. I would just like to note I will be abstaining as I was not present for this meeting. Are there any questions, additions, concerns on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, I will look for a motion to approve the March 14th, 2023 HRA board meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the minutes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Lewis and a second by Commissioner Mueller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4 to 0. Moving on to organizational business, item 4.1 on our agenda is a 2022 year-end HRA budget adjustment and transfers. Could we please have the staff report?
I'm Mary Lee. I'm the HRA accountant, for those of you who haven't met me. So the HRA is required to make year-end budget adjustments which reflect the actual 2022 revenues and expenditures of the HRA. Motion to adopt the resolution approving the budget transfers and budget adjustment. This would be a budget increase in the Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers for higher than budgeted expenses, and a lot of this is due to the increase in the rents. And then transfers in and out between the development fund and the Section 8 of $23,000 to cover operations.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, we're looking for a motion to adopt the resolution approving the 2022 year-end budget adjustment request by the Housing and Redevelopment Authority in and for the City of Bloomington.
Madam Chair, move to adopt the resolution for the budget.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wooten with a second by Commissioner Lewis. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye for the motion to adopt the resolution approving the 2022 year-end budget adjustment request by the Housing and Redevelopment Authority in and for the City of Bloomington.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 5 to 0.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 5.1 in new business, the proposed 2023 CDBG budget. Could we please have the staff report?
Thank you, Chair Huhim, Erica Coleman, HRA Administrator. So what we have before you this evening is the proposed 2023 CDBG budget or Community Development Block Grant. We would be looking for approval of the proposed 2023 CDBG Annual Action Plan and budget to recommend approval to City Council. And so the City of Bloomington became a Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, entitlement community in 1988. CDBG funds are allocated to the city directly from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, better known as HUD. The city does remain a part of the Hennepin County Consortium for purposes of the 5-year consolidated plan and home funding. Each year, the city receives CDBG allocation from HUD, and as approved by the HRA Board and City Council through the CDBG mutual agreement, the city administers this grant through the HRA. The grant is used for a variety of activities each year. The activities are selected by the HRA Board and City Council through an annual budget process for the program. That's the process we have begun here. The City of Bloomington will carry out activities that will provide for the preservation of the city's housing stock, provide affordable housing options, provide essential services to seniors, families, and individuals, and support fair housing activities. The city will use its entitlement funds to achieve the goals and outcomes that are identified within the proposed 2023 action plan and in the overall goals of the 2020 through 2024 consolidated plan, which was approved last year. The city has incorporated performance measures into the 2023 action plan to ensure that the plan is results-oriented and that it meets the city's 1- and 5-year goals. The planned activities serve many low and moderate income households, and overall, at least 80% of the grant will be expended on activities for low and moderate income households in Bloomington. Using the citizen participation process, the draft plan is currently available for a 30-day public review and comment period, which is from March 23rd through April 22nd. Written comments can be submitted by email or mail through April 22nd and will be included in the final documents submitted to HUD. The City Council will, at a regular meeting of the Council on Monday, April 17th, 2023, hold a public hearing to consider the plan. The HRA Board is requested to review the attached to your packet proposed 2023 annual action plan and budget and recommend approval to the City Council. And I can stand for any questions for that.
Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, we will be looking for a motion to recommend the approval of the proposed 2023 CDBG annual action plan and budget to City Council.
Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of the proposed 2023 CDBG annual action plan and budget to City Council.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve the proposed 2023 CDBG annual action plan and budget to the City Council. Is there any discussion? I do actually have something I would like to say. I would just like to say that reading through this really excited me, and the reason it did is because I'm seeing how many more things we're able to offer to our community and just how creative it has become with these funds. So it's not just limited as it has been in past years. So I see it being the availability being throughout the city of Bloomington for many different resources. And I just want to commend city staff and Administrator Coleman for your work on this and in creating this plan. So thank you. With that, I will now call a vote on the motion to approve the proposed 2023 CDBG annual action plan and budget to the City Council. All those in favor, please state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. We will now be moving on to discussion items. Item 6.1 is the HRA study item. Could we please have the staff report?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Huhim. So in 2021, the HRA Board approved a 3-year strategic plan that does sunset this year. Staff and the HRA Board will discuss the information and the formation of that plan, the work items completed, and the 2023 approved work plan as the strategic plan is ending this year and the HRA moves under the Bloomington Tomorrow Together strategic plan. And so I do have a presentation for you here. So just to ground us, the HRA, as we all know, was statutorily created, and the purpose of the HRA is actually directly out of that statute, which is known as the Housing Authority Statute or Housing Authority Act. And so our purposes here are to provide Bloomington a sufficient supply of adequate, safe, and sanitary dwellings in order to protect the health, safety, morals, and welfare of the citizens of Bloomington, to clear and redevelop blighted areas, to perform those duties according to the comprehensive plans, and to remedy the shortage of housing for low and moderate income residents, and to redevelop blighted areas in situations in which private enterprise would not act without government participation or subsidies. And so this is the lens in which all of our work is done and the parameters in which we do that work in the city of Bloomington. So I just wanted to provide just a little bit of information that about the work that's been done. So in 2017, there was a comprehensive housing analysis study that was completed by an outside consultant. It was Maxfield. This comprehensive housing analysis is on our webpage on blm.mn/HRA resources, and it's under housing studies and additional resources. And so there is some information there to be able to look at that, and if anything, look at the executive summary that pinpoints some of the things that we are tackling today and have been tackling for quite a few years now. Then in 2018, the 90-day tenant protection ordinance was passed, as well as the Minnesota Governor's Housing Task Force, a More Places to Call Home report was released around the state of housing in Minnesota and what kind of things can be done to allow for more housing affordability. In 2019, the Opportunity Housing Ordinance was adopted by the City Council, and our comprehensive plan was adopted on August 5th, 2019. This is a plan that is required by the Metropolitan Council that formulates our goals and actions that we will undertake over a 10 to 20 year period. In 2020, we can't skip it without just calling out there was a pandemic. You also had a new administrator start in 2020, and we did have to focus more efforts on housing stabilization around things that were exacerbated by the pandemic. They were not caused by it, but they were exacerbated by the pandemic. In 2021 was when the HRA board and staff moved together to provide the 3-year strategic plan, so 2021 to 2023. And the HRA housing report was released, and this was the first time a housing report was released in quite a few years for the HRA. And then 2022, we completed the HRA import assessment with recommendations as approved by this body and the City Council. The Itasca project was completed. This is also on our webpage. This is something that Bloomington was involved in and represented in terms of housing affordability for the region, the metro region, and different actions that can be taken. And then our strategic plan of Bloomington Tomorrow together. And so in the strategic plan, we did identify 5 values in which is the lens that we do all of our work. Develop sustainability, foster innovation, increase opportunity, preserve livability, and strengthen racial equity. So there are 5 strategies that we have, and the first one, I will go through each of them, but the first one is here of economic impact, education, and health. What this is connecting programs, policy, and projects for community stability, success, and wellness. There were 3 sub-strategies to this strategy, and underneath each of these bullet points is the work that has been done. So this is taking our 2021, 2022, and the work from 2020 that was identified in our annual housing report, and just high level, highlighting how that work achieved our strategic plan priorities, And so in advancing housing and economic priorities with regional, state, and national policymakers, I just want to highlight that we do have legislative priorities for the city that we do support. There is a whole legislative priority list that when the city council approves that legislative priorities, it does identify community renewal and housing. But as we all know, housing is just not siloed by itself. There are other impacts. We did pass special TIF legislation. So this was around 700 American to allow for a pathway for redevelopment, that the Port Authority is leading that process currently. That's a city-owned lot at 700 American. We are a part of the Regional Housing Policy Working Group, and this comes into play with not just being Bloomington by itself, but what does it look like for regionally for this 7-county region, this metro area, for constituents and for our citizens to be able to navigate and access what they need towards housing affordability. We are a part of the Regional Down Payment Assistance Best Practices Group. This group actually is being led by Minnesota Homeownership Center. Minnesota Homeownership Center did present to the HRA board and the city council back in 2021 to help inform our down payment assistance program that we do have right now. And then first generation homebuyer down payment assistance, the city of Bloomington is a support organization on that legislation that is currently at the Capitol, moving through with the requests for specific down payment assistance for first generation homebuyers. Build strategic partnerships within the economic ecosystem. I provided just a little bit of a snapshot of a picture of what the economic ecosystem is, just to show that housing and accommodations is only one piece, as we all know that, we live that, but being able to see a visual around that. And I just want to call out the Bloomington Housing Action Team. This is a group that we have here in Bloomington that is led by the HRA, by the city, but it is a collaborative effort and continues to be that. So the Bloomington Housing Action Team that used to be the NOAA Working Group is now moving forward with making sure that it's co-led by Public Health, which is the Advisory Board of Health, the Human Rights Commission, the Sustainability Commission, and the HRA. And so therefore, all working together so that we have a holistic approach when we are making recommendations in the different components that come with housing. And so we will be looking for 2 commissioners from the HRA board. The reason it's 2 is because we don't want to get into quorum or open meeting laws when we meet. So 2 commissioners from the HRA board to sit on the BHAT. So there'll be more information about that, but these meetings are moving from meeting during the day to meeting in the evening to making sure that we are accessible for our partners and stakeholders that also participate in that group. And then the Homeownership Opportunity Alliance, which is by the Minnesota Homeownership Center and Wells Fargo, that is a public-private partnership around best practices to accessible housing. Lastly, engage in collaborative initiatives to expand reach and effectiveness with insights gained. So the Itasca project, I actually sat on that. Bloomington was represented on the Itasca project, and Bloomington was represented on the Groundbreak Coalition, which is fairly new, but it does tackle the areas of housing, which is rental housing and home ownership, as well as entrepreneurship and commercial ownership. And then Just Deeds, this is the project where we did discharge a racially restrictive covenant language on the HRA-owned property that we had here in Bloomington. Next is engagement and transparency, so increasing awareness in community, stakeholder, and internal and external partner engagement. I want to highlight that we did adapt our approach by, one of the things that we did was the HRA board meetings were not always available and streamed, and now they're available on the city's YouTube channel regularly to be viewed. We do work with Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. We have culturally specific marketing of resources and engagement, and then we did have an eviction prevention clinic. We had a housing resource fair. We are a part of the Neighborhood Watch event that just happened with the Bloomington Police. So this is just showing that we're engaging and collaborating more through a lens of equity and racial equity, but also just as being Bloomington together, right? And then lastly, in exploring agile methods of collaboration and communication, one of the things I want to highlight is service coordination and referrals. Bridging is one of the nonprofits that we have supported with administrative support, but we were not a referring agency as the HRA, and we are in the process of becoming a referring agency as the HRA. And then Bridge to Benefits is through Minnesota Children's Defense Fund. They actually have a online tool called Bridge to Benefits. And so it is a tool that anybody can go on there and fill out the information without putting in their personal information, but find out what other things are they eligible for and what else is in their community to assist with them. I do want to highlight that we are engaging with employee resource groups and community groups and other government entities to get more feedback and more information, but also that we're not doing this alone. We are working together in a lot of these initiatives for people to call Bloomington home. Housing creation, preservation, and rehabilitation. There's a lot that we do here, but what I want to call out is the coordination and the collaboration that it takes for us to carry our work forward. And so under enhanced offerings and sources for rehabilitation and renewal, I just want to highlight environmental health. Our A Brush with Kindness program that we help support those that need additional help through Habitat for Humanity, that came straight from environmental health. Environmental health staff are the code enforcement, housing code enforcement staff, and they were coming across residents that just needed more help, and they did not have the tools as the regulatory body to be able to provide those tools. And they brought this information to the HRA, and they said, can we do this? Can we look at a pilot program to partner to provide these types of forgivable loans for households that qualify where we don't have to continue to write violations or assess them? That's how we got A Brush with Kindness. And then our help loan, that also was environmental health saying, this is a great product, but can you look at it a little bit differently? Can we make referrals? And that's how we got to the revisions of the help loan. Planning. The accessory dwelling unit, missing middle, single and two family zoning standards that planning is coming from with planning and zoning. That is to help us do our work as the HRA when we are looking at housing creation. When we are looking at promoting development and redevelopment and renewal, that is us working with planning of them making those recommendations and ordinance changes in our amendments. Building and inspections actually worked with us to put together an HRA permit. An HRA permit is one that when people are using the home improvement loan program, instead of them having to have different inspectors come out and whether the work required pulled a permit or not, we worked with building inspections and they put together an HRA permit for us that is specific for those home improvement loan programs. And so it's more of a coordinated and consolidated effort, not only for us as staff to stay in the know of what's happening, but also for the homeowner. And it's easier navigation. Then we have energy efficiency resources and offerings. That is us partnering and working with sustainability right now, the sustainability coordinator that is out of Public Works. And then lastly, I want to highlight the integrate resources and partnerships to create and preserve affordable units. The 4D program that we hear about, which has to do with smaller properties that are affordable, what we would call naturally occurring affordable housing, and it's a 4D classification. It's a tax classification. It's completely through our assessing division. That is not the HRA necessarily doing that on our own or leading that by any means. And so I just wanted to highlight what I went through very quickly outside of sustainability is the other divisions in community development in which we are a part of. I can't skip over our Port Authority, the Europolis expansion project. HRA is providing that TIF, but that is the Port Authority working on that project and working with that owner. And so I just wanted to highlight how we are all working together, where we may have an item that we call out as the HRA, but it takes tons of collaboration with our community development divisions and other divisions in the city or departments in the city to get it done. Lastly, Homes Within Reach. I just want to highlight that they have done 5 properties between 2021 and 2023 with the funding that we have provided. We provide funding through CDBG every year for them to acquire and rehabilitate at least 2 houses in Bloomington. And so they acquire the homes, they rehabilitate them, and then they sell them to an income qualified family, and the homes remain in the land remains in the land trust. So that's what helps make it affordable. Even with that, they still need the additional help. And so that's where we come in as the city through the HRA and CDBG of providing that. There are 3 more properties in the pipeline right now. They have 1 more property to acquire and rehabilitate yet this year. And then they're still looking at to develop 2 units And so that is the 3 properties in the pipeline. And a part of those 2 units is that they receive funding from Minnesota Housing specifically for Bloomington to do 2 units. And so I just wanted to highlight that. We also have created supported private market development, and with that, I just called out Oxborough Heights, Noble Apartments, and Cadence, which do have 100% affordable, but 50% and 30% units. Housing stabilization. So this graphic is actually a graphic that is one example of missing middle housing. And I decided to give a graphic because we mentioned missing middle housing, but a lot of people are like, what is that? And as you can see, this graphic shows accessory dwelling units, single family units, duplexes, triplexes, courtyard apartments, and whatnot. I will be clear that a triplex in the city of Bloomington is a multifamily unit. It is not a single family or 2 family. It is a multifamily development. But according to missing middle definition broadly, that is what missing middle does and can include. So in housing stabilization, we are enhanced offerings reflective of the whole housing continuum. And so some of the things that we have done, improving access to and opportunity to homeownership. The down payment assistance, known as the home buyer mortgage assistance, is 0% interest. So not only did we have down payment assistance that we have launched as a pilot program to inform a permanent down payment assistance program, but we also made it 0% interest. And so that, again, is through that lens of equity and inclusion, of strengthening racial equity and looking at our values and saying, when we're doing something, are we looking at all the components of it? We offer our Journey to Homeownership and Homestretch courses. We have approval for the Housing Choice Voucher Homeownership Program, so we are still moving through the process. This is where someone who is on the Housing Choice Voucher Program using that voucher for rent can work towards self-sufficiency through education and purchase a home on their own and still use that Housing Choice Voucher if needed for their mortgage. So that's creating that pathway to affordable homeownership. We also increase support and service delivery with underserved populations. We have our whole homelessness response and prevention services that was funded and approved by the City Council through American Rescue Plan Act dollars. We have a partnership with Bloomington Public Schools for emergency rehousing. And then we have our foreclosure prevention assistance and counseling services, where we partner with Minnesota Homeownership Center for Bloomington residents to receive their assistance and or counseling to help preserve them in their home if they're hitting hard times due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The last strategy was operational efficiency, and this is prioritization of resources and process improvement for future success. So here is where the HRA assessment, which became the HRA Port Authority assessment, came out of. We were looking to enhance our organizational and governance structure for high-quality service delivery. We are integrating technology. We have a customer experience survey that we released and launched, and it's still open. We keep that going where anyone that has had interactions with the HRA or our programs can take that survey and give us feedback. And so that's a part of our continuous improvement. And then in terms of our team cohesion, we had our first ever HRA board and planning commission meeting back in 2021. That was the first time. We hadn't had a concurrent meeting like that. And as I just noted earlier, all the different items with planning was really neat and very important to be able to have those discussions, those open discussions in a concurrent meeting. And then lastly, strengthen financials and operating policies. We did a lot of operational policy streamlining. The board did approve quite a few updates to different policies, but then we're looking at our data retention with our integrated technology, and then coordination of resources to support the work focus. And so that is working with different divisions, departments, but also our community stakeholders. And so moving forward, 2023. The work plan that you have approved for 2023 does focus on our housing continuum and or ecosystem. Those words are somewhat interchangeable. And so the 5 areas that were in the 2023 work plan that was approved were operational, housing stability, homeownership pathways, housing preservation, and housing creation. We'll probably never move away from that because that embodies the housing continuum in those 5 topical areas for our organization. And so, in looking at the housing continuum, I wanted to show that even though it appears as a straight line, it's not. Anyone can end up at any point in this continuum, at any point in their life, or go back to it. And so it's these different components, these different symptoms or factors that definitely impact somebody being able to stay in their home, obtain stable homes, or be able to purchase a home. So I just wanted to show this because all of these things, as I went through high level of those slides, we're doing every last one of these. Somehow we are involved in doing every last one of these. Found services, faced eviction, increased income stability. And mind you, increased income doesn't necessarily mean that we're increasing people's income, but if their income is increased or if they completed an education, then they fall within certain brackets of whether community housing, affordable rental, affordable homeownership, or even market value rental. So somehow our programs, policies, services, coordination, and referrals touch on every last one of these topics along the housing continuum for our Bloomington residents, current, past, and future. This next slide is a lot. Don't think you have to read it. It's a lot, but I wanted to put this on there because it will take some time to kind of digest it. However, this came directly out of the Minnesota Governor's Housing Task Force. This was the document that they came out with because it takes all of these different actors, tools, plans, initiatives to reach the final product. And so in the blue, those are the big external forces at the top of the screen: political, economic, infrastructure, social, innovation. We do place some roles in there. You'll see words like zoning or restrictive land use. Those things do impact housing. The next item down is current conditions. That's really more the market. And as we have heard now, we know interest rates have risen and, different factors. Incomes haven't kept up. There's different factors, whether you're renting or you're owning, whether you're trying to rent or you're trying to own, or whether you are trying to just maintain. Those current conditions truly impact that. But then we get down to actors in the gold color and tools in the purple. And this is where the HRA does do quite a bit of its work. We're not necessarily regulatory, but we answer to regulatory, whether it is federal, state, regional. Where does our funding come from? Financial. Again, where does our funding come from? But then in the purple with tools, ownership, rental, construction financing, and supporting service funding. We literally have a role in every last one of those in Bloomington. Every last one. And then under that, you'll see is the kind of reddish orangish color, plans, projects, and initiatives. This is our building and inspections, our zoning and planning. This is our environmental health. But then it's also our Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And it is also our community outreach and engagement. All of that is within the plans, projects, and initiatives. And then lastly is the types of housing, which is what we are trying to work towards, where if we can provide different types of housing, it goes towards housing affordability because affordable is relative. So when you ask about affordability, we do have parameters that are defined by HUD that affordable is at 80% area median income or below when you're thinking of home ownership. And it's at 60% area median income or below when you're thinking of rental. What are those numbers? For a family of 4, 80% AMI is around $90,000, a little bit over. And for a family of 4, 60% area median income is around like $70,000, $60,000, $70,000. But when we are focused on deeper affordability, when we're focused on that 50% 30% or below. That is where we are looking at different options and opportunities to provide for decent, dignified, stable housing for those that are living in Bloomington or would like to live in Bloomington. And that's where we really look to our partners, not only in the city for the different levers that can be pulled, zoning, planning, environmental health, code enforcement, building and inspections, which also enforce the state building code, but then also we're looking at our nonprofit partners, Habitat for Humanity and the West Hennepin Affordable Housing Land Trust, who focus on 50% area median income borrowers and below. That is how we get our work done, and that is how we do it. So this slide is online, and if anybody would like to just take time to look at it, you can, but also on our HRA Resources webpage, the link to the Minnesota Governor's Housing Task Force webpage and report is there. So you have more information to kind of dig through this. Tons of information here. And then lastly, as I said, we are part of Bloomington Tomorrow Together as we are sunsetting our 2021-2023 strategic plan. And I just want to remind that the mission statement is to cultivate an enduring and remarkable community where people want to be. And to cultivate would be to build, preserve, develop, and redevelop or renew. And that is what we are doing here. And so with that, I am open for any questions, comments, or discussion about all the work here that we do in the HRA.
Thank you, Administrator Coleman. As she said, this is a discussion item, so I'd like to just open it up if anybody has any questions, comments, anything they'd like to state.
Madam Chair, I would just
Commissioner
like to
Wilson.
say I appreciated it being so comprehensive and so complete. I mean, it covered basically everything. There may be questions, but I like the fact that it was very clear. So thank you, because I know it probably took a little bit of work for this, so thank you.
I would just like to state a couple things that kind of stuck out to me when I reviewed it and then going through it with the slides was, I guess seeing how all the departments within the city work together to create, pretty much what we do here, how we all have to work together. I think that was very eye-opening. I think that clarification is really important, not only to our board, but I think to residents. I don't think that majority of us realize what all it takes to get a project done or what all it takes to create more housing within the city of Bloomington. I think that this is a good start of a discussion that's going to be continuing through the city council with the zoning that has been postponed as of now. So I think that, kind of understanding why some of these things are important and bringing attention to them at this time especially is really key. And it really opened my eyes to things that I didn't, I'm still feeling new at this, and I've been here for a little while, but we're constantly learning, we're constantly doing that. And so I really appreciate that because that's something I don't think that was ever brought to me previously on the board, is really how interdepartments are working to create affordable housing within the city of Bloomington. It's not just the HRA, it's all of us. The other thing I wanted to touch on is, that concurrent meetings. I want to say that Commissioner Lewis, who was Chair Lewis at the time, and I attended that meeting, and I want to say that, I was a little hesitant going into it because you're like, oh, it's another meeting. It's kind of, I'm honest. That's the one thing I am. But I think we're both super energized, at the end of that meeting. It was so amazing. So I just want to state that I would really like to see that continue. I think those meetings are really important. I think so much is taken. Planning learned a lot from HRA learned a lot from planning. It was really an eye-opening experience, I think, for all of us, and really what each other does, and it was kind of, and what we can do, the future, and cluster housing and all these things that came up in these conversations. I mean, we were dreaming big, and we were allowed to, and I appreciated that space to do that. So I just wanted to kind of touch on those couple of things and bring them forward and kind of note them that, I think this is really important. I think these study items are sometimes we look at them going, why do we need these? But I really appreciate it. you know, you kind of think of like a study item, but no, I think it's very important. And so I just want to thank you for the time that has been spent on this. It really opened my eyes. Like I said, I didn't realize all the work even that goes into, you know, what the HRA does and how many different, you know, levels that it hits within the city of Bloomington. So I truly appreciate that.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Lewis.
And hearing about it tonight, there was a time not that long ago when our departments didn't really work together. And it's not that they weren't all doing their jobs. They just didn't know what everybody else did. We didn't necessarily understand how if we worked together, we got a better result rather than, because, you know, planning was over here and we were over there, and we worked with them when we had to, more than like while we were trying to get somewhere. So I love that this now is showing a collaborative thing, that we really are working together, that it's not a bunch of separate city departments. It's one unit. It's one Bloomington. So I think that's great.
Yeah. Thank you. Chair Huhim, Commissioner Lewis, Commissioners, thank you for that comment. I do want to highlight, because I'd be remiss, we have always worked together. We haven't talked about it. So I would be remiss if I didn't really actually mention that as departments, as divisions, we have all worked together. That's the only way we've been able to get things done, but it hasn't been brought to you. And I think that's the important piece, is to bring it not only to our boards and commissions, but also to our public, our residents, so that they know that that is what's happening.
Madam Chair. And I would second that, because that, true. I know people work together, but I don't think the public knows what everybody does.
Are there any other comments, questions? I would just like to add again that thank you for this time. Thank you for creating this. I know it was probably quite a bit of work, but it was very educational, something I will be resourcing in the future, because there's a lot to dive into still. So don't be afraid if you get an email from me here and there with questions. But other than that, if there are no other comments or questions regarding that item, we will be moving on. Oh, yes, Commissioner Wooten, sorry.
Thanks. The only point I was going to make is I hear about the collaborative efforts of our city government departments, which you can't put anything like this together unless you actually do work together. From a community perspective, a person who actually lives in the community, it gives me great hope. And also, as we were talking about earlier, as a sidebar, a sense of rebuilding community. And that old antonym of it takes a village. I mean, I'm old enough to remember, neighbors actually being neighbors and families actually raising families. And this is as close to what I remember as a child growing up to what community should look like. And so as a person who's tax-paying, house owner, father, good neighbor, it gives me great pride to be a part of this.
Thank you for that. I think that's the perfect way to end that, unless anybody else has anything else. If not, we will move on to item 6.2, which is Commissioner questions and comments. Are there any questions and comments on anything that was not on the agenda tonight? If not, we will be moving on, looking for a motion to adjourn the Tuesday, March 28th, 2023 Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting.
Madam Chair, so moved.
Okay, I got a motion.
Second.
And a second, with a motion from Commissioner Lewis and a second by Commissioner Mueller to adjourn the Tuesday, March 28th, 2023 Housing Redevelopment Authority meeting. Hearing that, we will take a vote. All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 5-0.